They told me to be quiet again, at my own kitchen table, in the house I paid for. My name is Dorothy Mitchell. For 15 years I was invisible in my own family, but I held the checkbook. And when you control the money, eventually you learn you control everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I realized I'd become a ghost. My daughter Jessica, at my kitchen counter, was planning her Hawaii vacation on my credit card. My son-in-law Brad ignored me, scrolling his phone. My son Marcus talked over me about needing a new car. When I opened my mouth, Jessica held up a finger, not even looking at me. "Mom, not now. The adults are talking." I was 67 years old, a retired hospital administrator who had raised 2 children alone after my husband died young. I had a solid pension, savings, a paid-off mortgage, and my independence. Yet, somewhere along the way, I had become the family ATM. It started subtly, as these things often do. A small request for Jessica's mortgage after Brad's business hit a rough patch. Help with Marcus's daughter's private school tuition. College funds for my grandson Tyler. Braces for my granddaughter Sophie. I said yes, because that is what mothers and grandmothers are conditioned to do. We sacrifice, we provide. We believe we are ensuring our families have what they need, but temporary became permanent. 1 month became 12, 1 year became 5, and 5 became 15. The request snowballed into an annual expense sheet that would astound most financial advisors. Jessica's mortgage at $2,800 monthly, Marcus's daughter's expenses at $2,500, Jessica's car payment, Brad's business investments, Tyler's $40,000 annual college tuition, health insurance, phone plans. The list was extensive, meticulously recorded in a ledger that spoke volumes. Over 15 years I had given them $847,000. I never asked for repayment. Family does not keep score, right? But gradually, their gratitude dissolved into expectation. Expectation hardened into entitlement, and entitlement fostered my silence. At family dinners, I was a prop, spoken around, through, or over. My stories were interrupted, my advice dismissed. Any suggestion to discuss the finances met with laughter or a swift change of subject. The final indignity came on a Sunday afternoon, at my house, a home I maintained and filled with food I bought. Jessica complained about a delayed kitchen renovation, Brad wanted a luxury SUV, Marcus planned a Vegas trip. When I tried to speak, Jessica's voice was sharp. "We're having a conversation, please." Something snapped inside me. Not my heart, but my patience. That night, alone in my home office, the ledger spreadsheet glowed, a testament to 15 years of being taken for granted. My banking app confirmed it all. Checking, savings, investments, retirement fund, all under my control. Years ago, I had added Jessica and Marcus as authorized users for emergencies. They had debit cards linked to my accounts, knew my credit card numbers. My finger hovered over the settings. What if I just stopped? The thought was both revolutionary and terrifying. What kind of mother cuts off her children? Then I remembered Jessica's silencing finger, Brad's dismissive laugh, Marcus's rolling eyes. I recalled my friend Patricia's words. Being a doormat doesn't make you a good mother. It makes you a used one. Sitting in the blue light of my computer screen, Patricia's words resonated as a stark prophecy. I clicked into account settings. I removed Jessica and Marcus as authorized users. I canceled their debit cards, changed all my passwords, and set up 2-factor authentication on everything. I went further. I reported my credit cards compromised, requesting new numbers. I removed them as beneficiaries from my investment accounts, replacing them with charities. I removed their names from my mortgage documentation. It took 3 hours. By 2 a.m., every financial door they had freely walked through was systematically locked. The last thing I did was draft an email, A simple message. Dear Jessica and Marcus, effective immediately. I will no longer be covering your expenses. All accounts have been secured. All cards have been canceled. All automatic payments have been stopped. This is not a discussion. This is a decision. Love, Mom. But I did not send it. I wanted to observe what transpired when the money simply stopped flowing without explanation. I wanted to see how long it took them to notice, if anyone would call to ask how I was doing, rather than why a payment was declined. Perhaps it sounds petty, but after 15 years of being silenced, I wanted my actions to speak louder than any words they had never let me finish. I went to bed that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. The next morning, 17 missed calls greeted me. I made myself coffee with deliberate slowness, grinding the beans, heating the water to precisely 200 degrees for my French press. I sat at my kitchen table, and watched my phone buzz like a Christmas tree. Jessica, Marcus, Brad, a flurry of calls and texts. Mom, my card was declined at Target. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Are you okay? Why aren't you answering? This isn't funny. I sipped my coffee. It was excellent. Perhaps the best I'd ever made. At 8:15, the doorbell rang. Jessica stood on my porch, hair in a messy bun, face tight with panic. Mom, what is happening? My card isn't working. The mortgage payment bounced. Brad tried your credit card and it was declined. Have you been hacked? I looked at her. Really looked at her. When had her eyes become so calculating? Come in, I said. She rushed past me, already on her phone. We need to call the bank. No one stole anything, Jessica. Sit down. Something in my voice made her stop. She turned slowly. I've secured my accounts, I said calmly. Changed passwords, removed authorized users, canceled cards. The money stops today. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then an ugly anger. You what? Mom, you can't just... We have bills. We have obligations. The mortgage is due in 3 days. Yes, I said. You have bills. You have obligations. Not me. You. Her outrage was palpable. I always paid them. Yes. For 15 years? I paid your bills while you talked over me, dismissed me, silenced me at my own kitchen table, in my own house. This is about Sunday, Mom. You're being ridiculous. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. $847,000, I stated quietly. She froze. That's how much I've given you and Marcus over 15 years. Every payment, every transfer, every covered expense. The color drained from her face. Mom, we didn't ask you to keep track. You didn't ask me for anything. You expected it. There's a difference. This is insane. You're our mother. Family helps family. Family also respects family. Family listens when family speaks. Family doesn't silence family members at their own table like they are inconvenient children. Jessica's hands trembled. So what? You're just cutting us off over one comment? Not one comment. 15 years of comments. 15 years of being invisible, except when you needed my checkbook. Her voice rose to a pitch I hadn't heard since she was a teenager. You can't do this. What about Tyler's tuition? What about my mortgage? Mom, we'll lose the house. Then I suggest you figure it out. I stood up, carrying my coffee cup to the sink. My hands were steady. I felt remarkably calm. Figure it out. Mom, Brad's business barely covers our basic expenses. The mortgage is $2,800 a month. How am I supposed to get a job? The silence was deafening. Excuse me? Jessica's voice was ice. Get a job. You have a master's degree in marketing. You haven't worked in 12 years. It's time. I can't just get a job. Who's going to manage the household? Who's going to be there for Tyler and Sophie? Tyler is 21 and in college. Sophie is 17 and drives herself everywhere. They don't need a full-time parent. You need a full-time income. Her face flushed red. This is unbelievable. You're really doing this? What about Marcus? Have you cut him off too? As if on cue, my phone rang. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. Yes, I said simply. Jessica grabbed her purse, her movements jerky with rage. Fine, fine. You want to be selfish? You want to abandon your family when we need you? Go ahead. But don't expect us to come running when you need help. Don't expect us to visit when you're old and alone. This street goes both ways, Dorothy. She used my first name. I'm already old, Jessica. And I've been alone for years. You just didn't notice because the checks kept clearing. She slammed my door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I sat back down at my kitchen table and waited. Marcus would be next. He arrived an hour later, more composed than his sister, but with the same underlying panic. My son had inherited his father's height, but none of his humility. Mom, we need to talk. Hello, Marcus. Coffee? No, I don't want coffee. I want to know what's going on. My card was declined this morning. I called the bank and they said the account's been closed. My name's been removed from everything. That's correct. He pulled out a chair without asking and sat down heavily. Why? Because I'm done. Done with what? Done being your ATM. Done being interrupted. Done being ignored. Done being taken for granted. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, if this is about... Look, I know we don't always listen like we should, but you're making a huge financial decision based on hurt feelings. That's not rational. I'm making a financial decision based on 15 years of data. That's extremely rational. You can't just cut us off without warning. Why not? You never warned me that I'd spend nearly $1 million supporting grown adults who treat me like furniture. His jaw tightened. That's what family does. Dad would have... Don't. My voice came out sharp. Don't you dare use your father's memory to manipulate me. Your father worked himself to death at 52. I will not do the same. The phone calls and text messages continued throughout the day. Brad left a voicemail calling me unreasonable. Tyler sent a text asking if his college fund was still available. I almost laughed at the audacity, a testament to the deeply ingrained sense of entitlement that had taken root over years of unconditional financial support. Jessica sent a long, rambling email about traumatizing my grandchildren and destroying their security. I deleted it without finishing. That evening, my friend Patricia called. We had had dinner scheduled for weeks. How are you holding up? She asked. You knew I was going to do it. I had a feeling after what you told me at book club last week. How bad is it? Jessica threatened to cut me out of their lives. Marcus called me selfish. Multiple voicemails using words I won't repeat. And how do you feel? I looked around my peaceful living room, my space, my home, my life that I'd worked for, saved for, built with my own hands and intelligence. Free, I said. I feel completely free. Patricia laughed. Good. Now comes the hard part. What's that? Staying strong when they escalate. Because, Dorothy, they will escalate. When people lose their source of easy money, they don't just give up. They fight dirty. She had no idea how right she was. This was not merely a family dispute. It was a strategic withdrawal of resources. And like any shift in a long-standing power dynamic, it would be met with aggressive resistance. The escalation started 3 days later. A knock at my door at 7 a.m. I opened it to find my granddaughter, Sophie, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, please. Mom says we might lose our house. Is that true? My heart clenched. This was the tactic I dreaded, using the grandchildren as weapons, an emotional blackmail designed to undermine my resolve. Come in, sweetheart. Sophie sat on my couch, twisting her hands together. She was 17, beautiful, with her grandfather's kind eyes. None of this was her fault. Your mom's house isn't going to be lost, I said gently. Your parents have options. They're choosing not to pursue them. But Mom said you cut us off. That you stopped paying for everything. Did she tell you how much I was paying? Did she tell you it's been 15 years? Sophie's face crumpled. She said, "You don't love us anymore." There it was. The knife twisted expertly by my own daughter. I took Sophie's hands. Listen to me very carefully. I love you more than life itself. You, Tyler, Emily, you three are my heart. But loving you doesn't mean I have to fund your parents' choices. Do you understand the difference? I think so. Your mom has a degree. She's brilliant. She can work. Your dad has a business. They can make different choices. This isn't about you. But what if they can't pay for my senior year activities? Prom costs money. Graduation costs money. Sophie, has your mother told you to ask me this? Her silence was answer enough. Sweetheart, I'm not the villain here. I promise you, this is about your parents learning to stand on their own feet. But if you need something, truly need something, you can always come to me directly, not through your mother, directly. After Sophie left, I called my attorney. Eleanor, an ironic name given my own preferences, had handled my estate planning for 20 years. I need to bulletproof everything, I told her. Smart. What are we protecting against? My children attempting to claim financial elder abuse, possibly seeking power of attorney or guardianship. I want documentation of my complete mental competence and the voluntary nature of my financial decisions. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Is that bad? It's about to get worse. She was right. That afternoon, I received a certified letter. Jessica and Marcus had jointly written to me, CCing my doctor, claiming they were concerned about my recent erratic behavior and possible cognitive decline. They requested I undergo a neurological evaluation. This was a classic maneuver, a legal assault designed to seize control by discrediting my mental capacity. I called Eleanor back. They're trying to declare me incompetent. Of course they are. Money makes people desperate. Can you come in tomorrow? We'll do a full mental competency evaluation with a court-recognized psychiatrist. We'll document everything. And Dorothy, start keeping every text, every email, every voicemail, everything. That night, Brad showed up drunk at my door, pounding and yelling that I was ruining his family. I called the police. They escorted him home with a warning. The next morning, Jessica sent an email to my entire extended family, cousins, nieces, nephews, explaining that I'd cut them off without cause and was showing signs of dementia. She asked them to stage an intervention. My phone exploded with concerned calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. The war had officially begun, a calculated campaign of psychological warfare and character assassination. I spent the next week building my defense like a general preparing for battle. The psychiatrist evaluation came back perfect. No cognitive decline, no signs of dementia, completely competent. Eleanor drafted official letters to my family members explaining the situation factually, with documentation attached. But my children weren't backing down. Marcus filed for financial guardianship, claiming I was vulnerable to self-neglect and financial exploitation. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. Jessica started a whisper campaign in my neighborhood, telling anyone who would listen that I'd abandoned my family and was not acting like myself. My neighbor Martha asked me outright if I was okay, her face full of concern and suspicion. The court date for Marcus's guardianship petition was set for 6 weeks out. Eleanor assured me we'd win easily, but the process itself was humiliating. They were treating me like a child who couldn't manage her own affairs. But the real victory came 3 months later. The silence was golden at first. No demanding calls, no guilt trip texts, no grandchildren weaponized against me. Just peace, space, And for the first time in 15 years, the ability to think about what I actually wanted from my life. I booked a trip to Italy, 3 weeks in Tuscany, staying in a villa, taking cooking classes, visiting vineyards. I walked through Florence with tears in my eyes, standing before David, knowing I'd earned this moment. Every euro I spent felt like freedom. Patricia came with me for the second week. We drank wine under olive trees and laughed about our terrible children. Her words, not mine, though I couldn't disagree. "You did it," she said one evening, watching the sunset paint the hills gold. "You actually did it. I almost didn't. So many times I almost called them. But you didn't. That's what matters." This journey was not just about money. It was about reclaiming my personal sovereignty. When I returned home, I found several letters had been slipped under my door. Not from Jessica or Marcus, who were legally barred from contact, but from Sophie and Emily. Sophie's letter was heartbreaking and healing at once. She wrote about understanding now what I'd done and why, about watching her mother spiral into blame and anger rather than self-reflection, about getting a job herself and saving for college. She included a check for $50 with a note. First payment toward a future relationship we're going to have when I'm 18. Emily's letter was simpler. "I miss you, Grandma. Mom says you're mean, but I don't think so. I think you're brave. Dad won't talk about it. But I heard him tell Rachel he should have managed his money better. Can I write to you sometimes?" I cried reading those letters. Not sad tears, proud ones. These small gestures were the first dividends of my new approach, proof that true connection could exist without financial strings. The restraining order expired after 6 months. Jessica and Marcus were allowed to contact me again. Neither did. Instead, I received a call from Marcus's ex-wife, Rachel. "Dorothy, I hope it's okay that I called. I wanted you to know that Emily talks about you constantly. She wants to see you. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me for stopping, for making Marcus face reality. He finally got a second job. He's paying his share of Emily's expenses consistently. He's becoming the father she needed. I know that wasn't your intention, but it's what happened." 3 weeks later, I met Emily for lunch. Just the two of us. She was 13 now, bright-eyed and chatty, and she told me everything about school, her friends, her life. She didn't ask me for money. She asked me about Italy. She asked me about my life. 6 months after that, Tyler graduated college. He'd finished on scholarship, with the degree paid for by his own work and student loans he'd managed himself. He invited me to the ceremony. Jessica and Brad were there. We didn't speak, but after, Tyler hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me I could do it myself." That's when I knew the money didn't matter. The years of payments didn't matter. What mattered was this. My grandchildren were learning to stand on their own feet. They were learning self-reliance. They were learning respect. And I was finally living my own life. This shift in dynamics highlighted a critical aspect of personal growth. Sometimes, the most challenging lessons yield the most profound self-sufficiency. It wasn't perfect. Marcus took longer, almost 2 years before he could face me. We still have complicated conversations. There are still hard feelings buried under healing ones. But my grandchildren, they call me regularly. They visit. They share their lives. And not once has any of them asked me for money. I'm 70 now. I have money in the bank that's mine. I've traveled to 7 countries. I've taken up watercolor painting. I've started a small scholarship fund for students in need, people who will actually appreciate it. And every single day I speak, I share my opinions. I take up space because I learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to save them from themselves. They called me selfish for stopping the money. I call it survival. My story is a testament to the power of setting boundaries, not just for financial independence, but for reclaiming one's identity and dignity in the complex landscape of family obligations and expectations.